Mr. Speaker, thank you. As I rise to make my contribution to budget debate of 2023, I will immediately move to do the parliamentary business of close to half and arguably more than half of the Guyanese population at this stage with the current state of affairs in our dear land. Sir, please permit me to declare my gratitude for my family and close friends who continue to support me and to provide the necessary strength which has become a daily occupational requirement. To my mom who is online, I love you. As we look around at the decay before us due to poor governance, most of us are horrified and worried about the current state of affairs. I extend great appreciation to the public servants who have worked tirelessly to complete the technical work that produces a budget. For that reason, your efforts are humbly recognized and appreciated. In this same breath, Mr. Speaker, I extend special recognition to the men and women who protect us on a daily basis, to our soldiers, our prison officers, our firefighters, our policemen and women, and all those honorable men and women within the security sector, and all those frontline workers. Hold firm, the coalition will be back to deliver the good life. Sir, this represents my fourth presentation of this nature and in the capacity of which I hold. And on every occasion of budget presentations by the government, I have maintained several themes. First, sir, there must be competent leadership at the Ministry of Home Affairs. I don't see my friend here, and that's an indication of what I'm speaking about. Public security is serious business, and it demands leadership. I will emphasize that if we continue to ignore the immense incompetence that sits in the chair of Brickdam, we will never be able, sir, we will never be able to arrest the serious decline in public security. Honorable Minister Ben, who is here, in his previous ministerial appointment, picked up a certain name, and from his performance to date, it appears that he intends to continue in that vein in the security sector, to not only demolish the homes in Maka, but the coalition's effective plans and programs that were in place to reduce crime and to make the citizens of this country safe and secure. Mr. Speaker, public security must be reimagined in this new oil and gas paradigm. It must be considered at the cabinet level and a national stakeholder level. It is way too complex, from the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy to the youth on the streets whose survival is a daily challenge. The country's security situation has reached its lowest ebbs, Mr. Speaker. So public security in the context of a polarized society must be based on two key considerations: economic security and the general security of all members of society. Mr. Speaker, I take no pleasure in reporting that none of these themes have been addressed in Budget 2023. And as a consequence, I cannot in good conscience lend any hint of support to certain aspects of the budget. And when I say that, there are certain aspects of the budget that are good, and I will support those aspects. But, sir, we are in serious trouble. Choke and rob is a daily norm. It happens every second, and the minister is aware of this. It has become so prevalent that Guyanese simply cannot walk past as their fellow citizens are being robbed in plain view. The gunmen have become so bold, Mr. Speaker, they jump out of the car and they pump bullets in their victims. And when citizens alert the police about this, what has just occurred, they respond by saying, "We have the car number." The gunmen are walking into homes and they are executing their victims in the full view of their families. This is public security under the People's Progressive Party. poverty. It is the wild, wild west. Families can no longer go out for a peaceful seawall walk. Nobody knows what or who is next. We are at the lowest ebb. And in comparison to the coalition term in office, Mr. Speaker, you would recall that under the coalition that people were safe and secure and that crime was on the decline. This is an indisputable fact, and you can heckle as much as you want. There are no more metal detectors at the night spot. Weapons are seen bulging from the waist of patrons at various night spots. The PPP budgets have always been about brick and mortar, and human development always takes a backseat. And if you look around, Mr. Speaker, you will notice that there are several private security firms in operation. And we must ask ourselves why. And the answer is simple. It's an indication of the people's lack of confidence in the state to provide security. This is an undisputable fact. The number of high-powered weapons in the street is another worrying concern. We will recall the most recent discovery of the 2 high-powered rifles in a bag. Another complaint we've received, Mr. Speaker, is the ease in which firearm licenses are acquired. Reports we have received indicate that for a small fee with no background check, Mr. Speaker, these licenses are granted. Mr. Speaker, sirens blaze through the town with zero accountability. Many of these vehicles are illegally equipped with flashing lights and sirens. Honorable Minister Ben, what are your plans to address this nightmare of a situation? It is absolute lawlessness and chaos. It is an absolute nightmare to drive where out of nowhere these vehicles illegally use these sirens and flashing lights to push you off the road. And this is something that happens on a daily basis. And I say to the Honorable Minister, familiarize yourself with the provisions of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. Your colleagues who are heckling can provide you with a section. And I say to you, it is illegal for these private vehicles to be outfitted with sirens and flashing lights. Citizens like myself no longer know the difference between legitimate security vehicles and private vehicles. Lawlessness, Mr. Speaker, has gripped this dear land of ours. Sir, just like the Gotham City, we are in the stranglehold of the Joker and his gang, and we persistently need a hero. Even our classrooms are not safe. Our teachers are under assault. Businessmen and women are expressing their fears about guns for hire. We are now the land of the many sacred cows who are above the law, and those at the bottom are following the examples of those who are at the top. Law and order has been replaced with lawlessness. Loud music blaze at wee hours in the morning. The people cannot sleep. And this is not only my personal experience. This is the experience of many citizens. In this office, Mr. Speaker, has given away to blatant indecency. Accountability has given away to the carnival of corruption. And I see my friend is shaking his head, and I know he agrees with me. In the midst of the grandiose speeches and unrelenting propaganda, we were promised better public security and performance. But, like we all know, things got worse. Budget 2021 came, and again there were grand speeches and great hype. We were promised better public security and good governance, but things got worse. And this is not only my testimony, this is the testimony of not only the opposition, but the people of Guyana. Budget 2022 came with us like any other budget. There were speeches, propaganda, and no impact. It got worse. Mr. Speaker, here we go again in 2023, and the same thing obtains. And, Mr. Speaker, I know many of the other speakers have been quoting, so I will also quote. Albert Einstein told us, and I quote, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." A cursory glance, if you listen to what I've just said, I've quoted Albert Einstein, but it's probably too too high up for you to understand. A cursory glance at Budget 2023 reveals that the same methods, same approaches. And Mr. Speaker, this results in insanity. Sir, this budget represents the fourth round of the insanity, which I have already mentioned. This time around, it is presented under the theme, Improving Lives Today, Building Prosperity for Tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, if there is no economic and security for all lives, lives will not be improved and there will be no tomorrow for many. If the people cannot afford basic necessities, there is no security. When the price of bora, and many of my colleagues have spoken about this, when the price of bora has increased by over 50%, it ought to be difficult to talk about prosperity for all. This budget was presented against the backdrop of high prices at the market, and it leaves a large section of our population with the view that the prosperity of a few is only available to a selected few. Sir, Budget 2023 did not have a situation analysis. Theories or general philosophies that form the honorable gentleman who made this presentation here for over 5 hours. And I say this, for over 5 hours, the people waited to hear how the oil money will make its way to their dinner tables and the lunch kits of their children. But this never happened. It appears, sir, the money has been directed to infrastructure projects. And I wish to state this and place this in record. This is something that we absolutely welcome. We need infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. However, we have to balance that with the well-being and the prosperity of the citizens. Infrastructure, and I state this for emphasis, infrastructure projects are important. I'll now deal with the security allocation. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 has allocated $58.6 billion for public safety and public security, an increase of $7.1 billion. In 2022, the government allocated $51.5 billion for public safety. What did we see? That is the big question. What did we see? What did we experience during this period? In the year 2022, the crime rate by country 2022 report submitted, and I will lay over these reports that I'm citing, Mr. Speaker, that Guyana has the 8th highest crime rate worldwide of 68.7 and a murder rate of 4 times higher than that of the United States. This statistic is from an independent source and did not square with the numbers provided by the Guyana Police Force, who reported on themselves. Sir, I call on the Guyana Police Force to release the resources on data collection. How are these statistics compiled? What methods of sampling is being employed? Do these statistics consider that Guyanese hardly report incidents of crime to the police force? And we cannot, Mr. Speaker, trust this data because it flies in the face of what we experience every day. So, Mr. Speaker, if a $52.5 billion could not make us safe in 2022, it is safe to conclude that $58.6 billion cannot do the trick, with no plans to address these serious issues. Like most of you, I'm reading. And it is safe to conclude that money is not the problem. The problem lies in the lack of economic security, and it's something that you cannot comprehend, and the feeling of general insecurity in this country. Mr. Speaker, the problem is the compromising of the independence of the Guyana Police Force. The World Bank report has reported that Guyana's poverty rate is among highest in Latin America and that of the Caribbean. The IDB has noted that Guyanese live on less than $5. Mr. Speaker, in this sad economic context, any strategy to address public security must rest on targeted poverty reduction programs. So, Mr. Speaker, I refer the members on that side of the House who are clearly at a loss with what I'm talking about to the manifesto of the APNU-AFC. And I know this is a high level of information for you to comprehend, but read page 24. Page 24 is very instructive. Our policy on public security is premised on the consideration of promoting our people's safety. We tie public security to the economic security of our citizens. It is simple. It is simple. If a man cannot find food, he is likely to become a perpetrator of crime. I now turn to the Ghana Police Force, Mr. Speaker. Between the years 2015 to 2020, the coalition government worked assiduously to professionalize the Ghana Police Force. And on August 31st, 2018, President Granger appointed a substantive commissioner of police, one deputy commissioner for administration, one for administration, one for law enforcement, and one for intelligence. And at the ceremony at State House, the head of state declared, and I quote, "Office of Commissioner of Police is not a toy, a trinket, or a tool of political favor or patronage." This declaration, Mr. Speaker, articulated a policy that established a clear constitutional distinction between the Police Directorate and the Ghana Police Force. It reinforces the view the police force must be independent. Mr. Speaker, at that moment, we proceeded on the path of a professionalized police force that has gained the trust and the confidence of the public. And after years, sir, after years on the vice grips of phantoms, ghosts, and the drug underworld, the Ghana police force was returned to some semblance of normalcy. The Police Act is very clear. The force is charged with the prevention and the detection of crime. And I know some of you on the other side of the house would want me to elaborate because it's very hard for you to comprehend. But time will not permit me to do that. But what I'll say, Mr. Speaker, is that the hearts of the past and current officers bleed for the Ghana Police Force. Incident after incident, the credibility of the force is being called into question. A few in the leadership structure are under the thumb of the political directorate. The men and women under this leadership cannot speak, and they cower in fear. And this is the reality. This is your legacy. Added to this, they are being instructed to make themselves tools of government propaganda. Sir, and these are not strictly the lamentations of the opposition. It is the people of Guyana who are complaining about this. The U.S. State Department, in its report 2021 Country Reports on Human Rights Practices, Guyana complained that, and I quote, "There were reliable reports that members of the security forces committed abuses. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of unlawful or arbitrary killings, including extrajudicial killings," unquote. And I will submit all of these reports, Mr. Speaker, and I'll say to my colleague that many of your police officers, they are quietly complaining. But I say it, like I've said before, to the men and women, I say to you, be professional, hold the strain, we will be back. In the context of the new oil and gas context, where there is economic and as envisioned by the Constitution. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, I see nothing in this budget that remotely seeks to address these issues. What are your plans, Honorable Minister, besides holding your head to overhaul the police force? How will you strengthen investigative capacity? Is it your long-term plan to always resort to RSS? It must be recalled that under our tenure, there was investigative capacity that was improved by the police force. But we are now back, Mr. Speaker, to being incapable to solve serious crimes. And Mr. Speaker, this is nothing but a sad, sad state of affairs. I'll now turn briefly to the Ghana Fire Service. Mr. Speaker, if there is ever a need to point to the particular area under the Ministry of Home Affairs that reflects the certainty to absolute incompetence, it's the issue of the constant fires. Never in in the history of this country, we have seen this development. Something is terribly wrong, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories abound. However, Mr. Speaker, I will not venture to engage in these conspiracy theories to besmirch the good reputation of this chamber. I will, however, venture to show a direct link between the incompetence at Brick Dam and the inefficiency of the Guyana Fire Service. Sir, allow me to be clear. They are professional men and women who can get the job done in the system. I have researched this issue, Mr. Speaker, and I've spoken to those who are involved. They are demoralized due to the constant political interference and the lack of a system based on merit. Hardworking and bright young people at the Guyana Fire Service are being pushed to the side and overlooked because they refuse to kiss the ministerial ring. Mr. Speaker, you will recall the issue of the promotion list. You will recall the extension of the contract of someone in leadership who should have been pastured a long time ago. A long time ago, not only because of age, but due to statutory requirements. Sir, the proper management of a ministry does not lie with the ability to be present at every fire and watch the manifestation of your incompetence as you drip in sweat. It lies in the ability to let the system work and absolutely stop the micromanagement. Let the professionals do their work. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, our schools are now a target for arsonists. So the incompetence is having real and far-reaching consequences for us. Sir, in any country of any consequences, the minister would have been sent home a long time ago. It lies in the ability to let the system work, and I say let the system work and stop the micromanaging. Let the professionals do their work. It's what they're trained to do. So, Mr. Speaker, the $2.7 billion which allocated to the Guyana Fire Service in 2022 produced more fire. There's no reason to believe that the $545 million, the $489 million, and the $20 million allocated in 2023 will make any difference. You cannot continue to throw money at incompetence. It will make no difference. It is insanity, absolute insanity. The budget needs to include allocation to send the leadership at Brick Dam packing. That is the only way to prove it's efficacious. Sir, I'll now briefly turn to immigration and passports. Mr. Speaker, I wish to repeat that Guyana's biggest public security trends remains the issues of economic insecurity. We cannot construct good public security in a nation where a large section of the population feels as if they do not have access to the resources. We cannot talk about public security without addressing the insecurities being felt. So, sir, in that context, we must examine the issue of immigration in the oil-producing Republic of Guyana. National Security Advisor has informed the nation that there are 60,000 Venezuelans currently residing in Guyana. The migration policy has reported that the number of Caribbean nationals entering Guyana has doubled. These statistics and these reports that I'm quoting from will be laid over. And added to this revelation, sir, Guyanese are reporting that they are encountering nationalities from across the globe. And sir, I have no arguments with this. This is understandable, and I don't understand the need for heckling. This will occur because we are being touted as the fastest growing economy in the world. But sir, we on this side of the house, we are cognizant of the fact that we need at least 160,000 workers to reach our potential. This requires a comprehensive immigration policy. So there is immense uncertainty about who has arrived in the land of El Dorado. These numbers are frightening implications for security. There's nothing in this budget, sir, that seeks to ascertain the following. How many foreign nationals are here? How many jobs have been acquired? How many systems are in place to ensure that the nation's national security is not being compromised? What systems are in place to ensure that Guyanese are given the first option for job opportunities? Mr. Speaker, Speaker, it is a known fact that Guyana possesses a relatively small population in the context of oil and gas, and we may need to source special skills from other places. But the lack of transparency and the lack of a clear and consistent policy by this government have the nation worried. And we need to know, and these are reasonable questions, sir. We need to know, and the people need to know, what category of skills do we require at this juncture? Which foreign nationals have we identified to plug those gaps? How does the policy align with the Citizenship Act, the Immigration Act, and the Constitution in general? Budget 2023 should have included a sizable sum for the Bureau of Statistics to embark on data collection to ascertain what is happening with the immigration policy of the country. Sir, the Migration Policy Institute has cautioned that the discovery of oil will lead to an influx of workers. Even though this is needed, we must ensure that Guyanese workers are our #1 priority. And those who are heckling cannot argue that this is an unreasonable request. It is a reasonable request. I now turn briefly, sir, to governance. Every week, the APNU AFC government, we have reported to the Guyanese people on the decisions of cabinet. We reported on contracts and so many more details. Today, there is a complete blackout on information. Members of civil society are writing countless letters to the Minister of Information to get the details on how contracts are awarded. But, sir, there's little success. The government refuses to be transparent. Sir, we all know that good government demands at minimum the availability of information to the people. Nobody knows what are contained in secret contracts that will impact Guyanese for generations. Sir, there's no information available on the large mining contracts. The government refuses to tell us what concessions have been made on behalf of the Guyanese people. Sir, Budget 2023 is being presented in the government context where the government is openly flouting, and I say this to my colleague, the extractive industry's transparency initiative standards. This has resulted in the EITI reporting on its board's decision to accord a fairly low score to Guyana. Mr. Speaker, all of this poor governance is coupled with the government's lack of interest in listening to the pleas of civil society. In this regard, sir, the government appears to be engineering a plastic civil society that will remain at its beckon and its call. The government, sir, has moved to question the membership and the leadership of civil society groups that provide constructive critique on their programs and their policies. Members of these organizations are being placed on blacklists and ostracized by the government. So, Mr. Speaker, I take no pleasure in reporting that the fear is real. In my efforts to prepare for this presentation, I made contact with a few members of civil society to get a better understanding of their struggles and what they were facing. And I was told in no uncertain terms, with almost gripping hands, not to reveal the names with whom I've spoken with. The fear of retribution from this government is real, Mr. Speaker. And the government policy of government appears to be, you will have your say, but we will have our way. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, I wish to re-emphasize that this $781.9 billion budget will amount to nothing if there is no attempt to ensure economic security for the Guyanese people. And this is a real concern, sir. It cannot be taken lightly. It cannot be taken lightly. You have to measure all these measures that you're placing in the budget to ensure that there is economic security for the less vulnerable. So, Mr. Speaker, we have seen for the last 3 years what destructive government looks like and how it can negatively impact our lives. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a deception in 2023 budget, and this is a deception that has become the hallmark of the PPPC. But in closing, I wish to say that there are certain aspects of the budgets where there are positives, infrastructure, there's some sort of benefits for the people, and I have no qualms about that. But I say you have to balance that. You have to absolutely balance that. If you cannot balance that, I will have a difficulty in supporting this budget. And when I speak, this is not my personal view, this is not the view of the opposition, but this is the view of the persons that I've encountered. And I traverse 4, 5, and 6, and this is the view of those people. So when I stand here, this is not a representation of me as a member of the opposition, but this is a representation of the views of those that I represent in 4, 5, and 6. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, I will say that this is the deception that we have seen in the continuous budgets presented by the PPPC, and this has become the deception of the People's Progressive Party. But there are certain aspects, but at this point, I cannot render any sort of support to the budget. I thank you.